Hello and welcome to this evening's edition of Unleash Hour, where I'm discussing personal finance critical control points. So, as we get started, I want to just pray. Father, in Jesus' name, we thank you and we bless your great name for this evening and for the discussion that we have around the topic of personal finance. I pray that somebody will learn a good lesson here, which they'll be able to apply, that it may make a big difference in their lives. My prayer, Lord, is that you will use me as a vessel to speak into somebody's life in a way that will bring about change. Thank you for every listener. Thank you for every person who will even be watching later. May this make sense and may this make a difference in their lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So thank you once again for joining us. And I want to go straight into a session for sharing my screen so that we are able to have this discussion. So and there we go. As I indicated, my discussion is going to focus on personal finance critical control points. And it's wise that I start by explaining what I mean by critical control points. My understanding of critical control points when it comes to finances is that these are important junctions in the personal finance journey. There are certain places you get to in your journey on personal finance, which I consider critical control points, that the actions that you take in those particular times can have a great bearing on your overall financial well-being. The other thing that I would say is these are moments when you can make a difference in the journey of your personal finance. So any point at which you can make a difference, any junction at which your decisions really matter, then becomes a critical control point for your finances. I brought this up thinking about my own background is in the hotel industry, and one of the things that we used to discuss when we were studying hotel management was something called HACCP, or the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. And we were basically looking at how the way that you handle food as it comes into the hotel and throughout the entire process, how you go about making sure that you're making the decisions and making the moves that will ensure that your food remains safe for human consumption, even as it goes through the entire process. So, of course, we would look at things like the point at which the food enters the store, the point at which it leaves the store going into preparation, the stage where it is stored after its preparation, and basically that entire process. So when I talk about critical control points from a financial sense, I'm also just looking at how you navigate the personal finance journey in a way that profits you at the end of the day, in a way that makes sure that you end up at the right place when everything is said and done. To start off, I want to begin by looking at what are some of the big time expenses that come up in the course of a personal finance journey. And these big time expenses have certain characteristics which I have listed on this slide. One of them being that these expenses are not for everyone, but they touch on the majority of us. So what you'll discover about what I'm going to mention is that in as much as it is not for everyone, you will realize that a majority of us can identify with this as expenses that we have to grapple with in our personal finance journey. The other thing is that if these expenses are not well planned, they can cripple you financially. That is, they can have an adverse effect on your financial journey. So we need to take note of these expenses so that we plan for them adequately. Number three is that most of our big time expenses are not emergencies. Uh, for sure, barring health, many of the other things on this list you'll realize are things you can always take time to plan for. And even the matter of health, as we will look at it, you will realize that there is quite a lot that you can do to make sure that it is less of an emergency should it arise. There are 7 needs that we can look at as being important to this whole conversation. One of the things that consumes a lot of resources is the stage at which a man, especially, is transitioning from singlehood into marriage. There's a bias towards the man because the expectations of society and all that are that the man who is going to get married has to take care of a lot of the bills involved in the process of getting married, from the dowry, even to the expenditure of the event or the ceremony itself. You'll realize that a lot of the burden, naturally, it is expected by society, will be borne by the man. And therefore, I want to say that it is important for us to know that we must plan for an expense of this caliber because dowries are not getting any cheaper as the days go by. The expenses involved, even in hosting a simple ceremony, are not getting any cheaper. So definitely you want to plan for this well in advance so that when it is time, you're able to take care of things without much of a hassle. Unlike what it has been in the past where people would come together to help you do this, we are living in an increasingly selfish society, selfish in quotes, because people are moving from thinking like communities to thinking from an individualized perspective. And therefore, you definitely want to be in a position where you're taking care of yourself without having to wait for someone else to come through for you. The other thing that also comes up as a big expense is anytime you're expecting a child. Every child, on top of being a blessing from God, is also an expense, right from maternity and everything that happens or goes on in the life of this child, because this child will need to eat, this child will need to be clothed, this child will need to go to school. So basically, when a child comes into your life, the numbers change drastically. The numbers in terms of what you're supposed to have change drastically because he or she is an item in the budget that must be taken care of. So yes, you want to plan better for every child that you would want to have, even as you go along. The other thing is, for many people, a residential home is a priority. Ask any average person out there in the streets, and you'll realize that many want to live in a place of their own. Many want to own a home. A majority of the people in Nairobi are paying rent, but if you ask them, they would prefer to be in a home of their own. And therefore, that becomes another huge expense because you either choose to go the apartment way where you look for an apartment and buy, or you choose to buy land somewhere and save up money, just to be able to construct a home. Sometimes it takes a very long time. Other people choose to go the mortgage way, which is not an option for a majority of our society, because when you look at the incomes that our people earn, very few can be able to qualify for mortgages as they are currently structured. So yes, you want to give more thought, you want to put more thought into how you're going to secure a residential home. But this is not for everyone. So like I said previously, some of these expenses are not for everyone. There are people who are fine living in rental property, and there are some advantages you can attach to that if you think about it differently. But hey, to everyone his own. So the other expense that you realize comes up is actually a car. In times past, a car would have been looked at as luxury, but as we continue to grow as a city and as we continue to grow as a country, you realize that there are certain times where a car really comes up as a necessity, especially when your family begins to grow and there are two, three children in the mix. All of a sudden, it's not very interesting to have to go to that stage and wait for the matatu. You want to find a way of being able to move around much more conveniently. Of course, I know you tell me there is Uber and Bolt and all those ride sharing, companies around. But I know for a fact that a majority, if they had options, if they were to choose, they would go the way of being able to get a personal car. So that becomes an expense that you must also think about, becomes an expense that you must also work on. Um, the other thing that also figures, once you've taken care of those which I consider basics up there, is the aspect of investment that a majority of us are thinking, how do we grow the money that we have at our disposal? How do we ensure that we grow it and bring it, to a level that is better than where we are currently? And what that means, therefore, is it also becomes an expense in the interim because you need money to be able to invest. So how do you set aside money for investment? How do you ensure that you're working your way around to end up with viable investments going into the future? Then we have the issue of medical expenses. Anybody who has a young family will testify that children have a habit of falling sick at awkward hours of the night, and it takes quite a toll on your finances to be able to cater for their medical expenses, especially if you're paying out of pocket. So you want to ask yourself, how do you take care of your medical expenses? So medical expenses are one of the greatest expenses that we have to deal with, but not just for children. As you grow older, your own body also begins to, the process of deterioration, which is really natural because your immunity probably drops even as you grow older. So you want to ask yourself, how am I preparing for my medical expenses even as I grow older? Because in some instances, the expenses will increase as you age. And then there's another big one, which is retirement. How are you planning to live after your years of active service? Whether you are employed or you're self-employed, there will come this time when you do not have as much energy as you have now. So how are you going to ensure that you're able to maintain or improve the quality of your life by having an income that is able to support uh, that lifestyle that you envision? So retirement is a big time expenditure that you need to figure out. And at this point, I would like to raise a discussion about what is happening in our society, even as we go along. A number of things that come up. One is that in the past, we used to look at our needs as communal, but in the present, people consider needs as a personal issue. So, whereas in the past, a child would be looked at from the perspective of the community, such that if I have a child who has excelled in his or her education, then the community would take it upon themselves to ensure that this child is able to continue with their education to the highest level possible. Nowadays, people look at it and everyone just minds their own business. So we have moved from thinking at a communal level to thinking at a personal level. Secondly, in the past, children were for the community. Nowadays, children are confined to nuclear settings. Just what I have said. You realize even that in today's generation, you are not at liberty as an adult to punish a child or to discipline a child when you see them doing wrong. You had better wait for their mother or father and report the wrongdoing. You cannot take matters into your own hands, otherwise, you'll have a lawsuit on your hands. So that still cements the fact that we are moving from the communal sense of responsibility to a personal sense of responsibility. It is what is happening in the society. It happened a long time ago in the West, but it's also catching up with us here in Africa, that we are moving from our communal setting to a personal setting where everybody is minding their own business, everybody is concerned with their own issues, and no one is really bothered about what is going on in your life. In the past, it was normal for children to take care of their parents in old age. As a matter of fact, many parents would take their children to school with the understanding that when they grow old and retire, their children in turn will be able to take care of them. What is happening in our generation is that children are struggling to make ends meet for themselves. So if they have a struggle in making ends meet for themselves, what makes you think that they will find the resources to be able to take care of you in your old age? So you have to learn from what is going on now that unless you plan for your retirement well uh, and how you'll be able to take care of your needs, your retirement might not be as interesting as you envision. So remember that the way the society is structured at the moment and the economic burden that people are living with, very few children are thinking of being able to support their parents. They are actually trying to figure out how to support themselves in this particular environment. So you have to keep that in mind as we go along. In the past, fundraisers were a part of a normal existence. It was common for you to see people raise funds to take a child to school, like I have mentioned previously, to take care of a medical bill and basically many other emergencies. What is happening right now is that many people are frowning upon fundraisers. Think about the last time somebody added you to a WhatsApp group. Probably you felt like they are intruding. You felt like they are troubling you. You felt like, do we have to do this? And more so if they added you without your consent, definitely it becomes a problem. So many people are not happy. Many people are not keen anymore on raising funds for you for something that they consider a primary responsibility that you should have taken care of all by yourself, which is what has given rise even to the popularity of these unscrupulous lenders, digital lenders, because people have gotten to a point where instead of asking people to come and help them, they have to resort to digital lenders to hide the fact that they actually need help. So they seem to be doing fine, but in reality, they are struggling with debt and many other issues because, hey, nobody is ready to be added to that WhatsApp group. Nobody is ready to be involved in taking care of needs that have little to do with them. In the past, our focus was on survival, and that is why we were able to help one another survive. But right now, our focus has shifted to advancement. So we are struggling at a different level. And when the struggle is not so much about survival, very few people will want to pay attention to those who are still struggling to survive. So, what this means for you is that number one, you are on your own. You have to understand that as far as the world around you is concerned, you are on your own. So if you don't find a way of taking care of yourself, nobody is particularly keen to step in and be of help. That's number one. Number two, everyone has their own issues to deal with. Everyone has their own issues to deal with. What that means for sure is that everybody is paying attention to their own issues. Everyone is fighting their own battles. Everyone has their own demons to deal with. There's a popular song by a certain musician who you might know from a number of years ago. And one of the lines in the song says, si tuna shida zetu, tusikize zako kwa nini. Basically, we have our own problems. Why should we pay attention to you and what you're doing? So the other thing is your failure to plan will hurt you the most. Your failure to plan will hurt you the most. What I mean by that is that the fact that you're not planning, the fact that you're not taking care of your own matters, instead of hurting any other person, primarily the one who will suffer is you. The one who will feel the heat of that will be you. The other thing that also comes up is that people will bail you out only a few times. What I mean by that is that today you will have an issue and somebody will come through for you. Tomorrow you will have an issue and fewer friends will come through for you. But the moment people realize that you're always raising issues and that need them to come through and need them to step in, naturally we will tend towards the direction of saying, kwani huyu tutamsaidia hadi lini? So what that means is basically, hey, we've offered as much help as we can. This person really needs to plan themselves better. Finally, your emergency is no one's priority. What is an emergency to you is not going to be a priority in someone else's life. So you have to ensure that you're putting yourself in a position where you are able to deal better with your emergencies, lest you find yourself in a bad place. So we continue. I want to say that it is not all doom and gloom. The fact that we find ourselves in a society that is thinking much more individualistically, a society where people are reducing their engagement with the wider community because everyone is dealing with their own issues, does not mean that it is all doom and gloom. There is some good news, and there are three things I want you to remember. One is that you have what it takes to take charge of the situation. You have what it takes to take charge of the situation. You have a number of levers that you can push to ensure that you are in a better financial position going forward. as opposed to waiting for someone else to step in and do something on your behalf. Number two is that it's never too late, even if you've not been taking better control of your finances. At least you can start to do something today. At least you can engage a different gear, even as we learn and see what are some of the things you can do to make things better. Number three is that you can take action today, that right away, from what we learn here and from what we share here, somebody can go ahead and take action and bring about a difference in their individual situation. So I begin to look at those control points that we need to pay attention to and we need to work on. And number one is the point of entry. What I mean by the entry point is probably the first time you are in a position to earn an income. So this could be your first job, this could be your first business, this could be the first time you're doing something to earn a living. You need to take control of that particular step in the journey for a number of reasons. One is you need to choose your entry point carefully. Why I say that is that you see, we live in a third world country, and a lot of what happens is that for many of us, we are willing to take up anything that comes our way, especially at that point where we are struggling. But I have come to realize that sometimes it's good and it's better than to do nothing. Sometimes it has a way of hurting you in the long run, because some organizations or some people who you are trying to get to work with, when they realize that you are willing to start at a particular level, all of a sudden their perception about you changes and they think, this is not the caliber of people we want to work with. So, in line with that, you need to choose your point of entry carefully so that you are positioning yourself where your movement and ascension is far much better. The other thing that makes me say you need to choose your point of entry carefully is that there are certain things you might start doing. There are certain roles where you engage yourself and you realize that they are of a dead end nature. They have a dead end in the sense that there are no chances and there are very few opportunities for you to be able to move on to something better. So it is best to be careful about where you choose to start. It is okay to start at the bottom, but think about the fact that you need to be able to move from where you start on to the next one and on to the next one. So look at what prospects exist in this thing you are starting off, so that you are able to, you have room to do better as you go along. Number two, the other thing that you also need to think about is you must plan your exit meticulously. Many people make the mistake of thinking that they will start planning for their retirement probably when they are 40 or when they are 45 and the years are running down. But the truth of the matter is that from the first paycheck that you receive, you must begin to think about your retirement and what kind of retirement you're going to have. Whether we are talking early retirement or we are talking the conventional retirement where you're 55 or you're 60 or you're 65, depending on how you look at it. So you want to ensure that right from the onset, right from the point of entry, you are thinking about how your exit is going to be. Don't live and don't operate as though you're going to always have a steady source of income. Don't operate as though everything is always going to be fine. Think about the fact that one day you're going to leave this position where you are. You're going to leave this post where you are. So what's going to happen to you when you leave that point? Number three, Budget for it before it lands. The thing with money when it comes into your hands, especially for the first time, if you have not thought through how to spend it, you will all of a sudden realize that you have too many needs and you have too many things to take care of than you thought. And therefore, it is always good to create a realistic picture of how much you're expecting and what you are able to do out of the many things that you need to do, because we all have very many things that we want to do for ourselves and for others. So budgeting becomes critical as a discipline right from the onset. Number 4 is you need to check your appetite for expenditure. This ties in well with my last point that budgeting is critical. So what you'll realize is that there's always more to spend on than what you have earned. And therefore, unless you are clear and unless you are disciplined enough to put a cap on what you're able to spend, you will never have anything left to be able to do the things that will secure your future in a financial sense. So the entry point is very critical. It is a critical control point. The actions that you take when you earn your first paycheck, the actions that you take when you earn your first profit from a business that you are getting into, will go a long way in determining how you proceed going forward. Number 2, let us think about the times when you experience an increment. An increment could be in the sense that your profitability is increasing if you're in business, or you are in for a salary increment if you're employed. Basically, we are looking at what do you do, or how do you conduct yourself when an increment comes into place. One, you must realize that needs grow faster than means. So you'll realize that the things you never used to care about at your entry level, as you grow in income and all that, they begin to pop up. We are reminded of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that at some point you're just looking to survive, but as you go along you get to realize that there are issues to do with security, there are issues to do with self-esteem, very many things come into play, and if you're not careful, you will find yourself spending more than you thought you would, just because there's an increment. There's no problem with making yourself a little bit more comfortable. The problem comes when your entire increment is spent on taking care of things which you probably would do without for the moment, for the sake of a better future. They say that it is better to make certain sacrifices today that will guarantee a secure future. It is better to live below the level of everyone else for the moment, so that eventually you're able to live above their level for the rest of your life. But sometimes understanding delayed gratification is a skill, and not everyone is ready to do that. So just know that needs grow faster than means, and you therefore must be able to decide how you're going to handle yourself around that whole thing when there's an increment in your income. So the thing that you need to do is instead of spending your increments, think of ways and means of investing those increments. Think of ways and means of investing those increments. Number 3, beware of consumer debt, because what happens is that whether you like it or not, people are collecting data and information about you and what is going on in your life. And therefore, even financial institutions are out there waiting for that increment. The moment they realize that something has changed in what you're taking home at the end of the month, They will begin to come to you with offers. They will begin to come to you, and telling you this will make your life better. We believe that at this point in time, this is what would be good for you. We believe that at this point in time, you should be driving. At this point in time, you should be living in such and such a place and all that. What they are doing is they are looking for an opportunity to take a piece of the pie. They are looking for an opportunity to have a piece of the pie from what you have made. So the thing that you need to ask yourself is that whatever I'm spending, because it's not a problem to spend, but whatever I'm spending on, what are the implications in the long run? So if you can avoid what is consumer debt at this point, you will do well for yourself. If you can think and focus on investing, in putting money in places where it has the potential to earn a return for you, investing in assets rather than liabilities, investing in things that are able to put more money into your pocket rather than the things that are taking money away from you will be a good strategy at this point. This is also the time for you to take risks. This is the time for you to take risks because you have a little more leverage. You're not a survivor. You're not at the point of just surviving, which is what most of us are doing at entry level. So whatever money comes over and above what you are using to survive at entry level, you can use it to risk in taking calculated risk. You've thought about an idea, you've thought about an investment, and you've looked at the pros and cons, and you think you would like to give it a go. This is a good time for you to be able to do that. Number three, there is the point probably where you get a promotion, or if you're doing business, probably you are scaling. Your level is shifting. You have moved from just basically an increment in salary or an increment in profit, a small increment. You are now moving to a totally different level. You're moving to a totally different reality. That is another critical control point. And what you need to be thinking about at this point is you need to double down on your investments. So you need to go deeper down the road of investment. And what this means is that you need to do a lot of due diligence because at this point, even the people who are approaching you for investment opportunities are not the people at the bottom of the barrel. You're going to get ideas from many people. You're going to get ideas from very sophisticated people, all of them telling you that, you need to be in this space. You need to be doing A, B, C, D. This is what is working at the moment. So this is the point at which people will come to you with get rich quick schemes. They'll want to show you why this is the thing to invest in because it will double your money. I don't know in what period and all that. So you have to be able to see through all of that so that you are making investments, but you're making investments which have a high chance of surviving. You're not simply throwing money left, right, and center to see what will come up. This is not a time for you to apply a very risky approach to investment. This is a time for you to think carefully through your investment because you are not simply trying to see what will work. You've done a lot of that at the increment level, and therefore you're getting to a point where you are able to tell that this is what works for me and this is the direction I can go, and you push. So this is also a time for you to invest in financial advice. You have to look for financial advice from someone or from an institution which is not partisan in nature. What I mean by that is you're looking for financial advice from somebody who is not simply looking to promote a particular product that they want to sell you. You are talking to someone who is able to look at several products and several options and tell you I think in your circumstances, this would be the best way to go. So at this level, that is what you should be looking for. Number four, there is also the issue of unexpected windfalls. So you're there going on with your life, and things are just running, but then out of the blues, probably because of something you did some time back, or just an unexpected turn of events, you find yourself coming into money you didn't expect. And sometimes it's probably a huge amount. So what happens? Because that is also a critical control point. One of the things that we've seen happening with many people is that when they come into an unexpected windfall, they change their lifestyle, and they go on a spending spree, and they want everyone to know that they have made it. And what happens is that within 1.5 to 2 years at most, they are back where they started, or even worse off. So how do you ensure that you're able to handle unexpected windfalls better than that? One is have an advanced thought process. Have an advanced thought process. You cannot begin to think about what to do with an unexpected windfall when it is already in your hands. You want to create scenarios in your head and probably on paper of what you would do if you came across an unexpected windfall. You want to have thought through it well in advance. So this is something that you are doing now to ensure that should anything happen in the future that puts you in that position, you are able to think straight. So have an advanced thought process. Number two, top up on your retirement plans and all that, because what is happening is that the quality of our life is improving. Our life expectancy is going up. And so the likelihood is that we will be around much longer than probably our fathers in terms of life expectancy. And therefore, when probably our fathers would think about 20 years after retirement and they would be gone, we are probably looking at retirements that would last as long as 40, 50 years in some instances. So you want to ensure that if you come across an unexpected windfall, you're able to use part of that money to pad your retirement plan so that everything is working out well for you. Then at this point, you also want to engage in what is called posterity thinking, because the Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children and his children's children. So you want to think about the next generation. What are you going to be able to leave them when you're gone? So an unexpected windfall, part of it should be able to go towards posterity. Posterity should be part of you, irrespective of what is happening, but an unexpected windfall should especially be used towards taking care of that in a bigger way than you probably were able to do without it. Your late 40s and early 50s are another critical control point. And these are my thoughts about what should be happening. I am not there, so I would not speak from experience in regard to this, but this is what I probably have seen working for many people. One of the things is consolidation. You want to narrow your interests. When you're in your late 40s and 50s, you do not want to be throwing money around to see what will work, except you have some narrow interests where you are sure about what you're doing, and you have set aside a little amount to speculate and to throw around and see what will come up. At this level, you are looking at consolidation. You are bringing your investments together. You are narrowing your interests. If your money was in 6, 7, 8 places, you are trying to restrict that to 2 or 3 places where there is better control, and you have become clear that
I am good with this kind of thing, and this is where I want to operate. So at this point, you're also reducing risk. You don't want to go into places where the risk profile is very high. You are not at that level. Leave that to people who are 20, in their 20s and their 30s. Then they still have time to recover. At this point, you take a wrong move, your recovery might take very long, and you might not even have that time to recover. So you want to reduce risk. And if you have to play risky games, have money set aside for that, so that if that gets lost, your life is still able to continue without much of a problem. The other thing is beware of wasters. Beware of wasters. This is the point at which you'll find people thinking, I want to get a second wife. I don't know, I want to do what. You are in a midlife crisis of sorts. They say that probably at this time, if you had a mortgage, the mortgage is paid up. Maybe your children are already through school or they are finishing. So there is money that is hanging around. You are struggling with all these things, but now your struggles are coming to an end. So it is very possible for you to become careless with your money at this point, thinking that your worst days are behind you. So beware of wasters. Beware of things that can waste your hard-earned money and what you've worked for very hard for a long time. That is what you want to do at that point. When you are 60 plus, you must begin to think distribution. So at this point, you are thinking, how am I going to pass this on to the next generation? A lot of us in Africa have this problem. Our succession is an issue. We choose to die and leave things hanging for people to decide what will happen. But for those of us who are wise, we will want to have a succession strategy in place. We want to be clear about who is receiving what, who is entitled to what, because we have thought about what we have and we have deposited this with the right people. Definitely an attorney or somebody who is well versed with the succession law should be able to help you take care of this. So those are the things you want to be doing at that level. You are thinking more about the next generation rather than yourself. So you are not saying, this is my money, so let everybody else go and look for their money. Yes, that is true. You're not going to be giving them money while you're alive, probably, but you want to ensure that should you go at any time, the people that you're leaving behind are well taken care of, and there'll be no squabbles or wrangles after you're gone. This is the point where you need to pass on your know-how, not just the money that you have made. More than passing your inheritance in terms of property and wealth to your people, you need to pass on the know-how, both in terms of making this wealth and in terms of preserving it. Because what happens again a lot in Africa is that many of us, our wealth does not go beyond the second or third generation at most. We find a way of bottling it. We find a way of spoiling everything in the process. And our third generation goes back probably to where we started or even worse off. So you want to pass on the know-how about how to make this wealth that you have made and how to protect it as well. This is what you want to be doing at this level. You also want to protect the unborn and the young. So we are talking about probably the third generation after you or something like that. So whether you're going to set up a trust, whether you're going to have a will that is reflective of those who will come or whatever it is you want to do, you want to ensure that you're able to pass on your wealth and your property to people in a number of generations so that it does not die just with the next generation. You have to be able to think. I like how the Europeans and the Asians do. They think about 200, 300, 400 years from now. when they are doing whatever they are doing at this moment. And we need to adapt that kind of thinking as Africans if we are going to do well. As I finish this discussion, I just want to discuss some of the vehicles we can use to be able to take care of things in a financial sense. And the first thing I want to say is that different vehicles take care of different needs. And so you need to understand what need is being addressed by this particular vehicle. So there are short-term vehicles and there are long-term vehicles, as we will see in the next slide. No one size fits all. You must be able to look for yourself and decide which ones I'm going to use and which ones I will not engage, or what percentage am I going to put here, and what am I going to put in something else. So here are some short-term vehicles that you can think of. One is money market funds. Money market funds, what they do is they take a collection of stocks and bonds and bills and a number of other financial instruments and put them together into one single fund, which you are able to buy units from, and they generate an interest that is compounded in most cases daily or monthly, depending on the type of money market fund that you're on. So it's short term in nature. We have treasury bills, 90-day bills, 180-day bills. You know, you're able to put money there and it's able to generate something for you. We have certificates of deposit, which you can purchase from various financial institutions, where you are able to put some money away for some time and it generates an interest for you. We also just have different kinds of accounts which banks run, some for savings, mostly really for savings, and they're able to generate some little amount for you. So those are some of the short-term vehicles somebody can think of using when they are working on their finances. Long-term, you can think SACCOs. SACCOs are good for somebody who is development minded and they are thinking of using loan equity as a strategy for development. You want to be there. There is the aspect of insurance. This has both the benefit of protection from a sense of should anything happen to you, but they also have the aspect of being able to help you set aside money in a disciplined sense for a long period of time, which you can be able to go ahead and use. This is where education plans come into place. This is where personal savings plans also show up with that element of protection. Somebody can think in line with the real estate. You can choose to invest in real estate. There are very many ways of investing in real estate. We don't have time to go into that now. It's a discussion we can have as we go along in future. You can think the way of stocks and bonds from a long-term perspective. Anybody who is doing stocks and bonds should not be thinking about making quick cash. Sometimes it is the buy and hold strategy seems to work well. Those people who have succeeded in making a fortune out of stocks and bonds have taken a long-term perspective. Of course, there are speculators who try to time the market and all that, but personally, I do not recommend that because I know what it is capable of doing. Having discussed this, what should we do? Number one, as you reflect on those critical points that I have raised, think about what you need to do in your own particular situation. Are you at entry level? Are you at the point where you're becoming comfortable? Are you at the point where you are changing level? Are you in your late 40s and 50s? Are you past 60? Wherever you are, think about what you need to do for yourself so that you are taking care of the future better. I'll give an example. If you're a young person and you're just entry level, and you know that in 3 years I want to be getting married, or in 5 years I want to be having my firstborn, you don't want to start planning for that when it is 2 or 3 months to. You want to do that well in advance so that when the time comes, you are able to take care of things better and with minimal stress. Number two, you can also talk to us to help you plan your finances. We have very good advice that we can engage with depending on what your needs are. You can talk to us. You can reach us by leaving a comment on this discussion, or you can just talk to us on Optimize Institute, and we'll be able to see how to come in and help you. And the other thing you can also do for us is you can share this content and send others who need help our way with regard to this. And I know that somebody will be helped. So that brings me to a close of the discussion for tonight. And at this point, I think I want to put a stop to